In this problem, the function, let's see, what we are given is g of x equal x squared plus 8x. And x is greater than or equals to -4. What we need to find? The inverse function value when x equals 65. There is a long way and a short way. I'm not sure which one is long, which one is short, but I'll show you. One way is to, I'll show you both actually. One way is to find the inverse and substitute with x equals 65. Okay, but I want to start with a different method. Okay. Since I know that the domain and range property, I know that when the domain of the inverse is the range of the function, right? And the range of the inverse is the domain of the function. So the input of the inverse is really the output of the function. So the input of the inverse, which is equal to 65, equals the output of f of the function. Okay? So, and vice versa, the output of the inverse, which in this case should be the the inverse of 65, equals the input of f. So I'm looking at the output. I see that 65 is the output of f. So I'm going to take the first statement and translate. This may translate to the following. What I see is x squared plus 8x supposed to equal 65. And now I need to solve for x. Okay? So how we solve that? Well, first of all, so we are actually on the verge of getting into the next topic, which is quadratic function, but this is something that you should know how to handle. Let's write it as in a general form or standard form like so. Turn out that we can solve it by factoring. 65 is 13 times 5, right? And we can get positive 8 if we have x plus 13 and if we have x minus 5. Okay? And we have two solutions. So one solution, when we solve x plus 13 equals 0, then we get x equals negative 13. When we have x minus 5 equals 0, we get x equals 5. Of the two solutions, we accept what? Okay, this does not satisfy, okay, does not satisfy x greater than or equal to negative 4. So x equals 5 is the solution because this is the input. Now I'm looking at the next statement. The output of the inverse is the input of f. So this follows that the g of negative, the inverse function of 65 is simply 5. How many of you thought about solving it this way? You? 1, 2? The rest of you probably found the inverse and then plug in 65, right? That will be method 2. Method 2 we're going to find the inverse. Okay, so find the general term. So first step 1, write y equals the function, the original function was x squared plus 8x. Okay. Step 2, solve for x. Now that's a problem, isn't it? When you solve for x. So what do we do when you solve for x? So for x, you write x squared plus 8x minus y equals 0 and apply the quadratic formula. Unless you know other techniques, and we'll talk today about completing the square. So x equals plus or minus, negative b, so negative 8, plus or minus the square root of 64, 8 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times negative, times c, which is negative y. So we have plus or minus 4y, like so. Divide by 2. Okay, we see that the expression inside the radical is greater than 8 because you have 64 plus 4y, right? That's if y is positive. Well, we think it's positive because x is greater than negative 4, so this will make it at minimum 16. I don't know, but anyway, let's leave this discussion later on. So we solve for x, and now let's swap y equals negative 8 plus minus the square root of 64 plus 4x over 2. Again, we need to discuss the plus minus. We'll see it at the end. And step 4 will be the inverse, would be this much. And now we apply, when this equals 65, we have negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 plus 4 times 65. So let's see. This will be 130, 260, 324. What is the square root of 324? I'm not familiar with. Well, it has to be 18. So it will be negative 8 plus minus square root of 324, I'm sorry. 4 times 60 is 240, 4 times 5, 20, 260, and 64, 324. And the square root of 324 is 18. And we have two solutions, but we can reject the negative solution because if we analyze this solution, x has to be greater than negative 4, y, the inverse, turn out to be positive. And I'm not explaining this part well, but it's a side discussion. I don't want to dwell on it. So we're going to take just the positive. Okay? We're going to take just the positive, and we end up having 10 over 205. Of the two methods, I think the first method is a little bit easier. the explanation that I owe you a better explanation why we choose the positive, but right now I don't have a better explanation. So I'll take a rain check on that. I'll come back discussing it at a later time. All right? All right. Anything else, kids?